Lewis Hamilton picked up two separate pre-race procedural penalties at Sochi, but what rules did he break, and why did the stewards rescind his penalty points? I'm Thomas Marr, be sure to like and subscribe for the very latest Formula 1 news. Lewis Hamilton was given two separate penalties during the Russian Grand Prix at Sochi. Having started the race from pole position, the cumulative 10 seconds of time penalties were taken at his one and only pit stop, and as a result, the reigning champion was out of contention for the race win. Along with the time penalty, he was given a single penalty point for each of the transgressions. He wasn't very happy afterwards, saying that the stewards were out to get him as he moved on to 10 penalty points and close to a race ban, which is automatic when a driver hits 12 such points. The penalty points were later revoked by the stewards, but the time penalties still stood, while Mercedes were given a €25,000 fine as well. So what rules did Hamilton break? Ahead of the race, on his way to the grid, Hamilton stopped to do a practice start. This is standard procedure for drivers on their way out. For each race weekend, the race director issues notes that are publicly available through the FIA's transparent events documentation. These notes are instructions specific for the venue that are essentially part of the sporting regulations for that weekend. It covers specifics like track limits, track rejoin procedures, and crucially, the instructions over where to perform practice starts. On this occasion, the note said, "Practice starts may only be carried out on the right-hand side after the pit exit lights, and, for the avoidance of doubt, this includes any time the pit exit is open for the race. Drivers must leave adequate room on their left for another driver to pass." It's a straightforward instruction, on paper. The picture shown illustrates the area described by the notes. However, Hamilton travelled much further up the pit exit and technically out onto the circuit. He pulled over at the end of the pit wall, having requested to do so with the team. Based on the wording of the race director's notes, Hamilton was still technically obeying the instructions, as the notes didn't specifically state the zone intended. The wording actually could apply to the entirety of the track as being after the red lights, and it's that lack of specific detail that seems to have caused the stewards to reconsider. One penalty for Hamilton was for the breaking of the race director's notes, and the other penalty was for a breach of Article 36.1 of the sporting regulations. This states that drivers have to maintain a constant speed application through the pit exit. By stopping where he did, Hamilton didn't follow this rule. After the race, team boss Toto Wolff said, "Team manager Ron Meadows and I were with the stewards. The verdict was that he wasn't in the right place. There's no mention of what the right place is in the director's notes, nor is it in the regulations. I'm not happy with the penalty because it's far-fetched. We'll have to agree to disagree, and I will always respect the stewards and their job, but on that one, we'll agree to disagree." So why did the stewards retract the penalty points? With Mercedes seemingly accepting the penalty, it was unusual that a few hours later, the stewards announced they'd revisited the issue and retracted Hamilton's penalty points. They explained that, having heard the team radio telling Lewis to carry out the practice start where he did, the blame lay more with the team than with Lewis. As a result, they took away Hamilton's penalty points and gave Mercedes a €25,000 fine. This is unusual, considering the race director's notes are supposed to be known by all competitors, not just the team itself. Removing the penalty points was basically an acceptance of ignorance of the rules as a valid defence, and sets an unusual precedent in that it separated out the actions of the driver from that of the team. This is rarely seen, as it sets a dangerous precedent. Drivers are punished with grid drops for technical matters out of their control all the time. Just 2 races ago, Hamilton pitted into a closed pit lane at Monza on instruction from Mercedes. It's a very similar offence, yet the driver and team weren't separated for that penalty. So where's the line going to be drawn when it comes to instructions from the race director? Removing the penalty points suggests the race stewards accepted the ambiguous wording of the practice start location, but not enough to remove the penalty itself. With Hamilton feeling victimised by the initial penalty, saying the stewards were out to get him, race director Michael Massey responded, "From my perspective, it's very simple that if Lewis wants to raise something, as I've said to him before and said to all the drivers numerous times, the door is always open. I'm more than happy to discuss anything, but I think from an FIA perspective, we're there as a sporting regulator to administer the regulations. We have the stewards as an independent judiciary to adjudicate those, and therefore there was an infringement, and it doesn't matter if it was Lewis Hamilton or any one of the other 19 drivers. If a breach has occurred of the regulations, they will consider it on its merits. And also further to that, I would say adjudicate it equitably and fairly in the circumstances, taking all of the key elements into account. The practice start location is obviously very circuit specific and detailed in the event notes. So at every other event, Lewis has, along with all the other drivers, complied with the requirements of where they perform a practice start in accordance with the race director instructions. I would say that the reason why we determine where the practice start location is for the safety of all drivers, and also so everybody is aware of what's actually happening. We determine its location for a deliberate reason. That's it from me for the moment. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter at Thomas Marr on F1.